Alright, we're back. If you're just tuning in for the first time, this is a little deep into the yak shaving weeds, but I am making a repair on this DIY robot that we've been building to track my cat. So it's actually a network of robots, a camera gimbal, and 4 winches. And 3 of the winches right now are actually installed and working pretty well so far, but the 4th winch experienced a minor mechanical problem. And so I think we've identified the root cause was probably some combination of shipping damage and damage caused by me putting the wrong lubricant on the gearbox when I disassembled it earlier to investigate the shipping damage. So that all led to, well, the other root cause, I guess, was just a bad design, because I think the design was bad. There's this pin that holds the gear together that they just kind of shove in there and then melt over, and it's pretty bad. Anyway, I actually had a pretty good view of Tuco up on the rack, but of course he just started wandering around right before I started streaming. Maybe I can drive over and see him. I have to say, I don't like how I have to keep waking up this Xbox controller that I'm using to control the robot. It would be cool if I could adjust the time it takes to sleep. Mr. Radar says, hello, I hope your audio doesn't glitch out again. So I looked at, yeah, so some folks were reporting that the audio was glitching out at the end of last stream, and that was pretty frustrating because it's super hard to debug that sort of thing when people are reporting the problem but you can't actually hear it. So like I couldn't hear any problem on my local headphones here. Well, that's not entirely true. I could hear this one problem, which was definitely just radio interference with my wireless mic. But based on the descriptions people were giving in chat, it sounded like something more varied and severe. But I listened to the Twitch video from earlier today, and as far as I can tell, there wasn't anything, there was no interference after I switched from the wireless microphone to the wired. So I'm on the wired right now still, so we shouldn't be hearing anything. Let me know if you are. So all the interference from before that switchover was due to the RF. There was a little bit of noise from after, which maybe folks misinterpreted as the RF, but that was actually just me fidgeting with some Velcro as I was taking off the microphone. So yeah, let me know if you hear anything weird, but I think we'll be good. Right now I'm tethered to my desk with this microphone, but I can try the wireless again if I need to wander. I think this will be alright for a while. Tuco's got a good spot on the floor where we can actually see him, and that's nice. Cool. Well, good timing. Carrick just got home from work. And yeah, so the timing here on my end, so earlier this morning I did a stream with the gear that we designed yesterday, and that worked pretty alright, except for the fact that we discovered during assembly that this pin through the shaft that holds the gear on, I'd been assuming that was like going through the center of the shaft. Turns out it's actually very off-center. And so I managed to force the gear on there on this morning's stream, but it managed to distort the gear pretty severely, and so the gear was really wobbly. The gearbox turned, but it made a lot of noise, and definitely was not smooth. It had this kind of awful knock as that gear rotated, and kind of the elliptical nature of the gear caused it to mesh badly with the other gear every revolution. So we updated the CAD model, moved the pin over a little bit, and then we were bottlenecked on the 3D printer because I was still printing one of the replacement parts we'll need to reassemble the winch, the NinjaFlex herringbone gear. And I had to let that finish, and then I had to actually print the new part. And I also just decided, well, since we had a break in the streaming, I did a brief test, just pressed it on there with the vise, and it actually seems pretty smooth. I didn't go through and put a lot of lubricant on it. I just ran the motor a little bit, went up mostly to full voltage, and it seemed pretty smooth and pretty strong, but I didn't really want to put it under any stress until I epoxied the gear on the shaft. Since I guess I can show you a visual aid here. Tuco is in a tinier window now. Alright. So this is Kira. This is my old version of Kira I'm using here. This is the model that we just printed. I printed it out of my current high strength filament of choice for my setup here, which is PET Plus from Made Solid. And it seems like pretty good stuff. It's really hard to break, and I'm hoping that that continues even when I print gears out of it like this. So it's a pretty little part. It was like a 30-minute print. There's a little foot here where that just kind of helps it print. This was originally a gap in the original gear, but I think that space is fine to fill with, you know, kind of extended teeth. And then the actual helical gear starts. There's this cutout where you can see now it's actually off-center. And the idea is that way down here, the pin actually sits, having already been driven onto the shaft by the original manufacturer. So then I press this onto the shaft with a bunch of epoxy. The epoxy fills up this whole channel. And then the idea here is the epoxy forms around the pin, bonds pretty well to the metal, and then basically forms a key around the axle made of resin, which then drives the gear and reinforces this hole. So even though this looks like a big old void in the gear, that ends up filled in with what I hope is a pretty sturdy resin. I'm using the Loctite high-strength epoxy that I found at my local hardware store. So yeah, that's the part. Let's go back to reality. Speaking of oh geez, I just knocked it over. Speaking of reality, I should find the cat. Now I'm concerned that I don't even know where the part is. I only had it very loosely in this vise. If I had that on camera, I might have seen where it went. This is clearly a sign that my desk is too cluttered. Oh! Tuco left a toy under here. There's a little mouse thing under my desk that I'm sure Tuco left there on purpose. I'm gonna throw it over there just in case he's interested. Oh yeah, now I know where he is. Oh geez, he brought it back. Oh, good job, Tuco. Good job. What a good chirpy boy. Let's see if I can throw it where I've aimed the camera. Let's aim it over there. Oh yeah. I just totally knocked the part that I was just about to show you off the vise, and now I don't know where it is. Clean my desk slightly. Oh, Tico's really insistent now. I mean, it might have fallen on the floor. I didn't get rid that far. Yeah, Tuco. did I lose this entire axle? It was in the vise, and it must have fallen out of the vise. I only had it very lightly gripped in there. I am so bad at multitasking when Tuco wants my attention and I've lost my place in what I'm otherwise doing. Oh, Tuco. I know, honey. I know. How did I lose an entire axle? Oh, it fell in the trash can. Here it is. I didn't even think I had this near the desk. That also explains why it didn't make a sound. Great. I'm glad I didn't think to just like... I was about to think like, oh, it's so cluttered and the trash is so like cluttery, I should like simplify it, but of course it was in the trash. Alright, let's get back to this. Of course my hands have a little bit of lube on them now. Blah. Yeah, Tuco is really in the mood to play right now. It's nice when the camera picks up on that, at least. Alright, well this is slightly cleaner. Anyway, yeah, I should just go ahead and put the gloves on before the lube situation gets worse. And then I will show you what is happening here. I think I managed to even be slightly more prepared than the stream earlier today, and I actually have some clean SD cards to put my videos on. Yeah. Oh man, this situation's gonna get even worse once I start shooting in 4K whenever I actually make that switch over. We need that servo AF goodness. It is the time in the afternoon when the sun is in my eyes right here. Actually, I can fix that. There's a spot where, I mean, they're like huge curtains over here because this like warehouse that I'm in, it's one of those warehouse buildings that's like mostly windows because it's California, you know, and nobody's heard of insulation. Yeah, and so anyway, it's actually pretty great, except I have to keep it covered with heavy curtains a lot of the time because otherwise there's just way too much sunlight. So here's our axle. It's a little easier to demo maybe with these two other gears. So I have the original gear, which is very broken and covered in ink because I was using that to try to get some of the geometry. So this is the part that we are replacing. I think it is broken both because it was designed badly and because I weakened it with some bad lubricant, and possibly because of some shipping damage, and possibly because of being abused in a bunch of early R&D. Because this is the motor that I did a bunch of the really early testing with, and it's also the motor that I ended up like noticing that the shaft was pretty wobbly on. I took that one apart. As I reassembled it, I put some lithium grease on there, which might have interacted badly with the plastic and or the other lubricant. So, yeah. So ignore the colorfulness here. That's mostly just me trying to capture the profile by rolling it around on the paper. But it has some features. We managed to make a CAD model. The original design, man, focus you, fuck. Is that how you say it? The original model, I originally assumed that it was molded around the axle. Like they turned the axle and machined it, and then like insert it into the injection mold or whatever. That's I think much fancier than what they actually did, it turns out. So I think this pin either already had the hole in there, or they just like flat out melted this hole into the plastic as they put the pin in. So because the pin is in a weird position, it turns out. It's not actually centered. It's kind of weird. So the pin seems like they forced it in during manufacturing at some point, possibly using heat. And then the end of this whole assembly is actually plugged with this really haphazardly melted bit of plastic too, because we were trying to figure out where the melting came from. It definitely looks like it was like poked at with a hot and somewhat dirty tool, not like the kind of melting that I would expect to happen during a failure of some sort. So I think that this like melty bit, which we looked at this earlier under the microscope, and it looked like that was just part of the manufacturing process, and then it then acted as a fault line for the failure that we had subsequently. So yeah, that's the original part. And then I also have this, which is our second 3D printed part. I think I already threw away the first one. This one was all right, but it turns out this didn't really fit over the pins correctly. But the gear profile seemed pretty good, and it's quite sturdy. So this is again made out of that PET plus plastic at a pretty high infill. I think it was over extruding a little bit such that the infill was effectively almost solid. Tino asks if they could have drilled a hole in the gear after it was put on the shaft. Yeah, they would have needed like a jig to get that aligned right, but sure. That probably would have been annoying to do. I don't know, this is just like a weird manufacturing process. Anyway, here's mine. Here's the shaft. Oh, focus. Yeah, it's shaft and the latest gear. This was pretty easy to put on. I just put like a second gear as a spacer, pressed it in my little vise, and slathered enough epoxy in there to completely fill in those little keyways. So this epoxy, I put this on, what time is it? This was a while ago. This was like an hour and a half ago. So we should be able to start to abuse this a little bit. It's 5-minute epoxy that is supposed to be fully set within 30 minutes. But they say like 24 hours for full cure. So we shouldn't stress it out that much, but I think we can just assemble it and start trying to use this gearbox and see how well it works. But yeah. Yep. I'm pretty happy with this. So I think we just need to assemble it with a little bit of lube and then just see how well this motor runs. Try to actually load it a little bit. It seems good though, like compared to the original gear. I don't know, like a little hard to tell, like what. My gear is heavier than the original gear. I don't know if that means anything, but I find it satisfying. Alright, so I gotta put this other gear on the shaft. There's already just a little bit of lube on all the surfaces, which I wanted, you know, just to keep the metal from rusting or anything. But then we'll put some proper lube on the actual gears after we assemble this. It doesn't take much though. This silicone Teflon stuff is extremely slippery. I should maybe put a little bit, especially in the bushings though. Oh yeah, that's a good question. Ian asks where the motors came from. Yeah, it was on AliExpress. I think you can still find them on AliExpress if you look for this model number. It's from Tiny Motors. It's the TS53GZ86830. But what I've also had luck with is just searching for 24 volt, 200 RPM. Pardon me. To just like search for the basic specs, and then look for the photos that are plausibly this one, like the right bolt patterns and stuff. And with that strategy, I found some others that might be the same, and that's where I got the one that I ended up ordering one of from Amazon. And I mean, well, when I say Amazon, it was like UXL reselling via Amazon, and they're like one of those people who are companies who just like buys random stuff off eBay and then stores it in a local warehouse and then resells it at a markup. gooey. So the reason I'm using this lube is that it should be really gentle on the 3D printed plastics. And a couple of streams ago we thoroughly cleaned out this gearbox to get rid of the previous potentially detrimental lube concoction that I had in there. Oh man, this motor. It's just like a big ol' honkin' brush motor. Next winch design, if it happens, I might use something like this but smaller to move the spool, and then some kind of brushless motor with maybe a slightly more DIY gear train for the actual locomotion via the capstan. Alright, so that's plenty goopy. It's all greased up in there. Great. Oh, well, let's put a little on the end of the shaft too, where it goes into the bushing. Alright, and then the output shaft. I've had this in and out a couple times. I want to like put a little more extra lube on the bushing, but it's mostly in good shape. There's a bushing and a spacer. Make sure there's any lube around that area. Okay. Should be all the important parts lubricated. Oh man, this is damn allergies. Great time to have to blow my nose. Oh! Goodness, Tuco. What the? What even was that? I looked over and I saw him like hanging from like a metal beam that's like right next to the heater. Oh, I think he's hunting a fly. Ooh, yeah. Nice fit. Okay, I'm gonna do the rest without the gloves and try to like wipe up the lube now. Oh man, so slippery everywhere. There's a little bit of resistance there because there's actually an air pocket in the bushing that I'm pressing against. But I think that'll work its way out. I don't think the bushing is airtight. I'm gonna put the 4 screws back on that gear case. Four screws, right? Not 0. Okay, here's 2. Oh gosh, I didn't put the other 2 screws back in a weird place, did I? Thought I'd been careful to put all the screws back in this bag. Really? screws not end up in the same place? Oh, jeez. I think these are just M3. Maybe. I don't know. They have a countersink that I definitely don't have any of, though. Let's remember to find those, but I think I can test the motor with just 2 screws in the gear case. It wouldn't have ended up... Whatever. Let's try running this off low voltage again. Well, again. I was doing some of this off stream. When I ran this on stream before, it was running a little bit, but it was pretty stiff on account of the gear being pretty stretched. Okay. Power supply is at 1 volt. Ooh, yeah. Smooth and quiet. This seems good so far. I'm going to turn up the voltage, but 1 volt, 2 volts, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13, 14, 18, 20, and 24 volts. I heard something sound a little weird in there. I have the current limit set to 0.5 amp, so that's what I'm hitting right here. It's dropping down to like 15 volts. This seems good. Let's reverse it. Hard start. I mean, current limited. Okay, great. Now I just need to find those 2 screws I lost. I mean, I could probably find some workaround, but that's... This is frustrating because I was like specifically trying not to lose these screws, of course, and of course I lose them. I want to run this with some load in both directions, and then take it, take the cover off again, and then just look at like how it's doing. And if it seems like this is all right, I think I'm going to try putting this in a winch. See if we can make it work. Yeah, Mako MK says I screwed 2 in for testing last time, and I guess they got separated. Yeah, I think that's what happened too. I thought I remembered putting them back in the same bag though, but maybe that was a different disassembly, and maybe during a later disassembly I made a mistake and put them somewhere else. can't quite stall it with my hands. I don't want to like clamp something on there because that seems dangerous. Yeah. That'll take my skin off. Let's go back to the other direction. Ooh, I saw a little flicker on the video as soon as I disconnected the motor. I don't know if that was just on my monitor or if it was on the encoded video too. Yeah, the STL previewer on GitHub is pretty neat. I enjoy having that. It's like kind of annoying to store STL files in Git, but it's nice having the previewer. There's a little bit of a growl coming from that as I load it. Like the gear is not quite even. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's doing all right. Like it doesn't feel like it's in danger of breaking, just from like this amount of loading. It's much more likely to break my hand than, well, not like break my hand, but like abrade my skin, I guess. All right. And this is 24 volts. You can see this one still has a slightly wobbly shaft. It's not that bad though. Let's open this up. Sounds good. Yeah, it seems like a success to me. This seems like a good repair. I apparently suck at keeping track of screws, but if I can find a workaround for that, I think we're good. See, why am I just like putting stuff down on the desk like that? Also, what kind of screw is this? This looks like M3. This is smaller than M3. Oh man, okay. What's the damage? My highly sophisticated method of testing motors under load. Yeah, I know. If I was aiming for all the sophistication all the time, I'd never get anything done. Alright. I don't see any signs of wear. It all looks very happy to me. A 3D diff tool, I don't know. Weld the welds. Yeah, I mean, I could JB weld it shut. Let's see if I have appropriate substitutes. These must be M2.5 or something like that. What are the diameters actually? Yeah, I think this is an M2.5. I don't have a lot of those, but let's take a look. These are kind of important because they're like holding the body of the motor onto the rest of the robot, because the mounting is actually on this plate. Yeah, it's so weird. Just thinking about the fasteners. Yeah, most of this I can just get by with like M3x8, but I stuck the gearbox stuff in the same bag. Bring it back. To quickly check the floor, but I don't see anything obvious. Just gonna check my weird screw bins. I should probably pick through the trash too, just in case they fell in there also. That's a much finer thread. Oh geez, is that music? Where's my mouse? Oh, let's not have any music on this stream. Did you hear that? That wasn't me, was it? I think somebody else started that accidentally. I don't think I have anything even remotely right to like substitute for this. Yeah, I'm gonna just have to pick through the trash. This is great. Like, I think I had the bucket, like, like right here under the lip of the desk when I like tipped the axle out of the vise earlier. Let's put the second screw back in before I lose it too. Just try to get rid of some of this clutter. Alright, let's take a swig of coffee and dig through the garbage. Oh yeah, magnets. I assume these are magnetic. I do have like a screw pickup magnet. That would be useful. There it is. I get used to stuff being in the weirdest place sometimes. Like I just really gotten used to this being stuck to the top of the drill press somehow. Let's aim this back over at the actual cat. Although the sun's kind of nice. Can the computer see the cat? Sorry, I bumped the camera. It's gonna stop wiggling in a sec. What? Linkanu in YouTube chat says, hey, what are you up to? Wait, are you ordering your prints? I don't know what you mean by that. But I'll think about it. What I'm actually up to is repairing this motor gearbox. And I think we succeeded at that. But then I unfortunately also lost the screws. So now I'm looking for those. I think I might have accidentally dumped them in the trash can, so welcome to the glamour that is my stream. Yeah. So I'm gonna sort the trash here for a sec. I'm gonna put some gloves on because a lot of this is covered in lubricant. I do like buckets. Buckets are useful. Xkeeper says, this is weird. There are 2 cats on the video? Yeah, I know, right? It's pretty weird. Alright, is this like... I'm gonna have to like go through all these lube-covered towels and make sure there are no bolts stuck to them. Enjoy the local train as well. Idioms are fascinating. Oh, which idioms? I think I missed that part. Oh, I see. Screwed something up versus having nailed something. Yeah, that is funny. Pretty funny. Odds are they will have just like fallen to the bottom, but I've got to check everything. Oh yeah, there's also some epoxy in here, so yay, gloves. the Kim wipes and packing material and used gloves. Oh, I don't even know if it's in here. But like the axle was in here. Oh yeah, here's version 1 of the gear. I don't know if I care to save it, but we could, I guess. Junk mail. Build prints. Starting to get to the bottom where we would be able to see bolts if they were just hanging out loose in this bucket. So far I haven't seen anything in here that isn't supposed to be in here. Yeah, oh well. They're elsewhere. Next. Where else could they be? So I'm gonna have to sort the stuff on my desk a little bit. Oh yeah, Animo Corey mentioned that Winter Catan just made a video on demagnetization. Yeah, that was a really good video. I really liked that whole series, and I liked their mechanical approach to it. Oh. Oh, ha ha ha. I actually had a stash of extra hub pieces over here. These little critters. I apparently just have like a bunch of extras. I don't know why I have a bunch of extras. I don't see it on the floor. Guess I could check to see if, like, verify these screws are magnetic and then just like wave this around my desk for a while. Oh yeah. Super lube on stream? This is getting risque, says Tam on YouTube chat. Right? It's all over the place. It is, my fingers are slick with super lube. I don't think we actually need this anymore. I'm gonna put it away. Watch as I struggle to reassemble the gearbox after fixing it. There's a screw right here that's been staring me in the face, but it's not the right kind. It's also stainless. Yeah, none of those are the right kind. How did I lose them this much? Guess I could look under the ESD mat. There's some bearings under here. No. Nothing good under there. How bad would it be to JB weld it back together? That sounds bad, doesn't it? Here's one. Oh, here they are. Oh, how are they over there? What a stupid place for them. Yay. Yay. Okay. We should label this motor and the winch it's going in that we did this repair. I'm just writing down what mod this was and today's date for future me. So Pet Plus Helical Fix 2/1/2018. And I'm printing two of these labels. One will go on the motor, one will go on the winch. Oh man, we might have fixed this motor. Will this even stick? There's still a little bit of lube on this casing. This is thankfully, oh, it's really good label material, but oh geez. Oh geez, oh no. Let's clean that a little better. You might want to de-gnome your workshop someday. How would you even do that? Oh, bolt gnomes. let's see, I don't actually want to get isopropanol in the gearbox. I just want to clean the surface, especially the surface I'm going to stick a sticker on. Maybe clean the output shaft too, although the lube there, like it's just going to end up helping me hammer on the small gear when we get to that point. Let's just throw the lubey towels in my coffee. Will this still stick? Oh, this already feels unsticky. I think we already just wasted the adhesive on this. Can I clean the adhesive with isopropanol? That kind of wipe the dirt off. Will that stick when it dries? It's like a last-ditch attempt to save the label. Oh, maybe that worked. That seems sticky. I just applied it wet with some isopropanol after, also kind of like cleaning the surface a little bit with my finger. I think that worked. I'll let that sit for a sec and apply another label to the winch itself. And then we get to start the fun process of reassembling the winch. Where would be a good place for a service record on these? I was thinking on the back, because that's accessible even with a shell. This could go like down there. It doesn't need to be viewable without the shell, but that is just kind of a convenient spot for it. So, okay, let's put it up here. I've still got a little bit of lube residue on my hands. I'm trying not to get it on the area. Alright. I would like maybe try to wash up a little bit so I don't spread the lube too much. I'm about to assemble the winch and it's got lube on a bunch of the parts, but let's see what I can do. Alright, be right back. Okay. So we will need these pieces to reassemble the winch, as well as that and this. Winch repair kit. Okay. Gosh, I feel like we need like a coffee break between fixing the motor and repairing the winch. Sorry, I'm a little behind on YouTube chat. Just Call Me Bob says that I can split a 5mm bolt and I should have two 2.5mm. Tim also relates a moment that I'm thinking they witnessed. Cat scurries across floor, realizes they can't, or he can't stop, slams into a box. Right? Can we get Tuco on this? Oh, Tuco's back on the rack. I can definitely aim the camera that direction. Oh wait, can I? Oh, I have to go around this way. I think. Oh no. I just have to push harder. Too far. Can the computer tell that's a cat? I'm not really sure. I think it'll get there. Okay. This next part is somewhat annoying for multiple reasons. So the motor has to be hammered onto this piece, which also has to be pressed onto this piece. And all of that has to happen, or at least like these two pieces have to be attached while the motor is mounted in this bottom bracket. And then all of that like has to happen while like this whole thing is not really fully disassemblable. The wiring harness for the sensors loops through this hole in both of these two brackets, and the whole thing is just not really that easy to disassemble, really. That's an understatement. And then this part, like neither of these two pieces are actually, well, this piece is symmetric, so you can flip this, but you have to have it in the right orientation because herringbone gears. And this piece is not actually symmetrical. One side is a little bit thicker than the other. And I need to go into the CAD model to remember which one is which. Let's see, do we have that in Rhino? Pardon me while I find my CAD models on this hard drive. Mew mew. I agree. I did a lot of this design with Fusion 360 and then did a little bit of it at the very end with Rhino. So I'm opening it in Rhino just because that was the last thing I was using here, but I suspect we could also do this part in Fusion 360. I got a couple of good renders from this. Oh no. Go away. Yeah. Yeah, right, this was from Fusion 360's renderer. I think I also did some renders with Rhino. It's kind of a big model. Rhino has trouble with big models too. Oh, here we go. Rhino finished loading it. Okay, so we're talking about this gear right here. It looks like the thin side is facing away from the motor. And as this winch is sitting on the desk here, the herringbone kind of chevron pattern is like it's pointing left, kind of inward. So those are the key orientation features we're looking for here. Sorry if the wireframe is compressing badly. Let's try this. Let's also turn off some layers so this goes faster. That's better. Yeah, I like this 3D model. This winch bot is certainly flawed, but I like the general compactness of it. A lot of the design was really driven by how I wanted it to mount to the wall, and I think that part of the design worked out pretty well. You can see here I've got basically a stand-in 2x4 beam, which is kind of what I modeled the mount. And this is exactly what I ended up using for 2 of the winches. I just took a 2x4 of about this length and clamped it to something. But you can also imagine that this is a wall stud that's already in the wall, and then just attach this wherever. So anyway, yeah, so we'll need to force this together with the vise. That might be the next step. A slightly thicker end. I forget why I ended up doing that with the slightly thicker end and the not so thick end. I think I wanted it to be that thick originally, but then I had to trim it on the top because I wanted there to be more clearance here. So I think it was just an artifact of designing it kind of piecemeal. And that piece also acts as kind of a retaining lip to hold the... So you see that? There's like an overhang there. That also holds the gear on. So, thick piece on the bottom, chevron to the left. Here we are. And you can kind of stretch it on the first little bit by hand, but then it gets really hard and you pretty much need a vise to put this together. You need a vise, and you kind of even need like a flat-bladed screwdriver to get it started. I'm trying to get as far as I can with my finger, but I think I'm going to need a spudger or a flat-bladed screwdriver in a sec. I'll try starting with a spudger just to damage this as little as possible. Ow! I keep injuring myself with this stupid magic arm. It's basically a spring-loaded lever, and if you hold it wrong and then activate it, then it just kind of hits you somewhere. And so that time I was actuating it while I was holding the spudger, and so it just like hit the spudger right into my fingernail, which was cool. That was some pretty nice pain. Maybe a little flat-bladed screwdriver is what I want. I think that might have been what I used to get it in last time. I've done this like 6 times now. I think this might be ready for the vise. Let's see. Oh, Paul is wondering how I attach the pulleys to the ceiling. I guess my answer to that question would depend on whether you knew what the pulleys looked like, because the pulleys are a thing I made. Do you mean like just like how the bracket works entirely? Because the pulley bracket itself is designed to just accept a rope, and then right now the way I have those mounted, they're just like hung over features that I could use as kind of makeshift pulleys. So they're like slung over bits of the metal beams on this side of the room, and bits of the metal beam, and then bits of like a curtain mount kind of contraption that was attached to. It's basically all attached to the building's metalwork in some way, but the way I did it was to just I have a pulley mount which attaches to rope, and I tied that to one end of the rope after looping it through something that's high up. That was pretty straightforward. I might do something nicer later, but this was easy to do. I didn't have to get that high up. I just needed to be able to reach it with a pole. So I could attach it about, you know, like 15 feet higher than I can actually physically get myself. So I could actually put the pulleys up pretty high without having to get a super huge ladder. And that might not answer your question if you don't know what the actual pulley mounting bracket looks like. So the pulleys are 3 pieces. There's a single piece pulley, well I guess 4 pieces if you include like the spacer between the bearings, but there's like one exterior piece, and then there's a 2-piece pulley bracket. And the bracket holds an M6 bolt that goes through the 2 bearings. The bracket also has channels that accept 2 paracords, so the bracket actually kind of acts as like a scaffolding that holds the bearings in the right place, but then you kind of end up looping a paracord around the whole thing also for some redundancy. And that's the same paracord that mounts the thing to the ceiling. Okay, so that's fully assembled. So the thick side of this goes toward the motor, chevrons to the left, and then that should mesh with the spool, which is like that. We should be back in business. So, we gotta be really happy with what's inside the gearbox now, because it's gonna get really hard to disassemble past this point. So I'm gonna make sure that these screws are torqued down to my satisfaction. Let's get this ready to assemble. Gotta be really gentle with this. The wiring and the DC-DC converter that are hanging out are both kind of delicate. So I'm going to try to hang this so that the wiring is not extended and the DC converter is away from the ground. And then, like, these don't have to come that far apart. This really only has to come apart enough to get the spool in and out. And the spool only has to come apart because I need to get access to these bolts. That said, it's probably easier to pound this together with as much of this disconnected as possible. So I think the way that works is I squidge this over that way, take this over, carefully pile all of the winch over here on the desk, like some kind of distressed arachnid. Okay, and now that, aside from the wires going through the shell, is pretty much disconnected. This will come off too. Doesn't really need to though, that's glued in there. It's not glued in there that tightly, but it doesn't need to come out really. Now, while we still disconnected the power supply, let's just do one more power test. So 24 volts. Ah. A little bit of a clackety clack as it goes around, but it's mostly purring. And that could be the slightly bent output shaft for all I know. I think it's good enough to try. Okay. So then now the cap head M3x8s go on. These screws also, this is like my last time to access them for a while because they get stuck under this piece I'm about to hammer on. good time for coffee and collecting wrenches. Yeah, that's a good description. Ed says they're essentially hanging off of a loop in the end of a rope thrown over a beam, which works fine and has the added advantage that it's easy to take back down if necessary. Yeah, that's my hope. I can mostly get them up and down with a long stick, and why is someone calling me? Just a second. Hello? That was useless. I didn't even find my wrenches. This is basically just the show where I lose things. I just need a belt that has all the metric wrenches attached permanently with little retracting cords. This is weird. I don't know why I would have taken that away from here, but I don't see it. 2 goes on the rack again. At least there's that. Joseph thinks that the noise might be just the roughness of the teeth and it might wear in. Yeah, it doesn't, like, the motion feels pretty smooth, so I'm not too worried about it as long as it's not going to be, as long as it's not going to wear too quickly. I mean, to be fair, I did just put the winch on top of a bunch of things, but none of those, I think, are the wrenches I'm looking for. That's the worst place to leave the wrenches. They were like way up on a shelf next to one of the spool pigs, next to winch 1, because I was using it to take off the cover. Yeah, right, Joseph says retrain the Tucobot AI to identify tools. That would be super useful. Let's do that. Alright, now I've got my nice wrench set, which, like, I could probably find the right wrenches elsewhere in the shop to assemble this, but this is exactly the kind of task I want my nice wrenches for. Because having, like, good ball drivers and wrenches that work at weird angles, like, that's kind of what I need right now. Let's try to reframe that a little. Alright, so I'm just trying to do this gently without messing up my sensor wiring. It is annoying that this was fully enclosed instead of some kind of removable channel, but I wanted the strength on this part, and I didn't really see an easy way to make the wire removable, so I just, like... There were a lot of places in this design where, you know, if it's like I have to compromise between ease of assembly and how big the final unit is, and kind of ease of design and all that, I was usually making something that was just like more straightforward to design rather than more straightforward to assemble. Which isn't to say I didn't think about assembly, but there were a lot of cases where, well, this would be easier to assemble if I went back to the drawing board on several of the sub-assemblies and like redesign them a bunch, or I could just press forward and engineer something from this point forward that is possible to assemble, but maybe not easy. And like that's the approach I ended up doing a bunch on this project. And I think that's just, you know, drawing lines in the sand about prototyping and choosing, like, well, where am I just bodging it together until this one works, and where am I having improvements that I'm going to integrate into the next version. Click. 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 There we go. Just turn on the motor again, watch it run in there. Yeah, capsule networks, that seems interesting. Yeah, I'm certainly not married to one network architecture. Like, if we want to replace the YOLO object detector with a different kind of object detector, we could certainly do that. I'm actually pretty eager to replace the tracker with a different kind of tracker, or at least augment it with a different kind of tracker, because the current one is pretty mediocre. I think I might keep the current tracker, but augment it with something based on dense optical flow within the detection region. All right. So the next part. Thick side goes down. I should give this a bit of a chamfer to help it go on easily. More, less hard. To help it be less of a terrible thing. I think the tool for that is at the other desk. Grab that. So, oh man, either I'm going to have to move all this to the floor and do that there, or shake everything on the desk, so I might move everything to the floor. I seem to remember this requiring quite a lot of pounding to go in. I'm giving it a pretty healthy chamfer. Sorry, that was off camera. Pretty healthy chamfer with the deburring tool here. That'll help it line up nicely. And like, why didn't I just 3D print it that way? Well, it wouldn't have been as accurate, and would have been just like another overhang. So like, well, this seemed easy. Click sounds like we're still in AVE mode. Yeah, I got you with that one. Okay, so now I want to put something under the gearbox. Something thicker. Thinking something fibrous. I mean, as fibrous as the notepad is, I think I need an actual piece of wood. Yeah. Alright, so this part is tricky. You know, this is the hard part. So the spool goes on right next door. We need to keep this in mind. And hammer on the drive gear until it meshes just right vertically with this herringbone gear. This is how the vertical height of the gearing is set. With a hammer. And a laser eyeball. Capsule nuts seem interesting. They're also really new. Like, I only heard about them pretty recently too. I think there's like, and I'm also unsure like to what extent they're a new thing versus just some like trendy terminology for one researcher's thing. But the core ideas behind it do sound pretty intriguing. Like kind of a more like linear algebra transformation aware network architecture that's good at representing things despite affine transformations. At least that was my understanding of it. I really don't like how little protection the wire for the motor has over here. But such is things. Yeah. You can see how easy it is to get into a bad state when you're not winding it with careful tension, but here we are. So there's that. Coffee break. Alright, chevrons to the left, chamfers down. Oh, is that priest on speed dial? Let's start out with a soft hammer, move to a harder hammer if we need to. Oh, that might have been too far actually. Why did that go on so easily? Maybe the chamfer was too much. Oh, not too far, but we're getting there. Good, okay. Use that calibrated mallet to get these gears dialed in. But what if you go too far, they ask? Oh, then there's spudgers and flat-bladed screwdrivers and all that fun stuff. It needs like another millimeter. Mesh. I think we got a good mesh. Geez, I know I thought I could put away the lube, but we actually have not lubricated this little gear at all, so I should actually put some lube on there. And then I'm just gonna run this a bit with the casing. I mean, I guess there's no reason to run it with the casing partially assembled. I can just put this other half on. But yeah, we can run this in the simplest way possible. For a good time, try Super Lube. Chick-bow. Oh yeah. Yeah, I like that. Okay. That should be plenty. Into the bucket. Okay, so stuffing the sensor wires back through ever so gracefully. Is it? No. Squish. That's better. I just gotta get the bearings to line up. Ooh, squish has the bearings. Move. Okay. That should be assembled enough to just run this a bit and see if it runs smoothish. Carefully. Okay, so the motor is just connected directly to the power supply. That seems to be alright. I might have to hold this in place a little bit. So let's turn the voltage down. Start with just a few volts. 6 volts. Oh yeah, let's not do much of that. Let's go the other direction. So the power supply still has a 0.5 amp current limit now, so I can easily stop it, but it feels nice. I mean, it feels smooth. I think it's working properly. This is dangerous running it with a loose cord like this, flopping around. me tape this down. So that sound you're hearing is the squishiness of the lube that I just added on the new gears. Well, okay, you're hearing multiple sounds, but like that like squish, 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 that's coming from this gear. That more just kind of like wagon wheel grindy kind of noise, it's coming from this gearbox, but that's much more subtle and sounds alright. I'm going to try turning up the current limit. So current is now like limited at 3 amps. I'll turn the voltage up a little bit from 6 volts to 15. That 3D printed gear train seems to be doing alright so far. I think this winch is going back in service today. Well, this is good. So we have a fix, potentially, that actually is pretty easy to do with 3D printed parts. And I also have 2 more of these motors theoretically coming in the mail at some point. One of them this week from the US, and then one at some point from China. I feel like I could have hammered that gear in another 0.5 millimeter or so, but it's probably fine where it is right now. Thanks. Well, let's try running it in the other direction now that I have the cord taped so it won't unspool. Whew, nice change of direction there. Yeah, that's rad. I am quite happy with this fix so far. Thanks to epoxy and PET+. Okay, now we just have to assemble this stupid thing. Okay. Well, so I think the next piece to go in are the nuts that hold these 2 halves together. Just got the right wrench. Hello. Ultraflame says, hello, Micah Elizabeth. Hello there. How are you? I think we might be fixing a winch today, finally. I'm happy about that. Don't want to count my eggs before they chicken, but... strap it to your arm and do a Batman impersonation? You mean the winch? Or the wrench? I do like being a winch witch. Quick. Fortunately, I have to wiggle this back and forth to get it out now. I designed these holes for a slightly different size socket because for some reason I had some like kind of non-standard nuts at that time. And then of course when I reorder nuts, they work with these sockets. Yeah, I think it was like 12mm versus 13mm nuts for an M8 shaft, and the design was for 12mm nuts, and I ended up using 13mm. So then we have that. Alright, I think that's good. Let's flip her over. Oh yeah, MNIST. Yeah, MNIST is a nice example. But yeah, it's not a hard problem at all by any stretch these days. It's like basically a good toy problem for trying out new computer or new machine learning algorithms and like illustrating how they work to students. But it was like a hard problem a while ago. For folks who don't know, it's a really classic computer or machine learning problem that involves identifying digits 0 through 9. I think it was originally developed for identifying or for reading zip codes, like for the U.S. Postal Service or some country's postal service. And so it, you know, the mapping you're trying to solve for is going from some kind of really low resolution black and white, or is it monochrome image of digits. It's something like 12 pixels square, and resolving that to 0 through 9. And actually one of the best examples of MNIST I've seen recently was actually 3 Blue 1 Brown has been doing some really remarkable videos lately, and he did one recently, or kind of a series recently on kind of explaining how neural networks work, and he did an example with neural networks solving MNIST. Oh, interesting. Joss says, I thought it was interesting that after 20 plus years of discussion and speculation about using capsules, finally they implement something tangible, not just theory. And in this potentially groundbreaking paper, they only justify their approach on one data set. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know much about the history. I didn't know how long those, like the capsule stuff had been in development, or like I said earlier, like how unique it was, or whether it was just like weird terminology for something that wasn't actually that novel. Okay, so those are bolted. So I need to untwist this wire a little bit, but then the next step is to get these layers progressively attached back to the top. We will also have to recalibrate this winch. Like, that's still on the yak stack, it's still up there. I feel like you just kind of have to wrestle this thing together anytime it comes apart. Like, there's just so many dependencies in this design. Like things that I would not have designed that way. They just came together after iteratively designing many subassemblies. Just try to make sure the wires are on the right side of this assembly as I put it in. Oh, actually, I can't actually put the power supply on until I do these bolts anyway, so let's leave the power supply only roughly in position. Since we've got these halves together, I'm actually going to bolt the halves to each other, which will hold them loosely onto the light blue piece, and then I can use that to get the 6 bolts that actually hold them strongly, to get those on. So that would be some of these M3x35s that go all the way through here, like this one. Is there a nut in there still? There is. Oh man, I hate the itchy feeling I get from this lube on my hands. Should maybe wash it off again soon. Yeah, I might need a little bolt pusher tool. Okay, there we go. Got that. I'm not going to tighten them all quite yet. Just going to kind of mostly get these in. Yeah, nuts in there. Oh, these are the bolts that have a slightly too large hex head. Oh, hey, Son of the Cakes. Nice to see you again. Oh, that's a good question. Eric Schold is asking, what is it for? Yeah, I guess this is a good time for just like a recap of what this is even doing. So when you dropped in earlier, you might have seen me putting this gearbox back together. We made a 3D printed replacement gear for this other gear over here, which broke. So this one is broken. That one is broken. This one is not broken, but it is not quite right. The one that is right is in the gearbox now and seems to be working. And now I'm just putting this winch together around the gearbox. But if you're wondering what the winch is, this is actually for a project I'm doing that is kind of a robotic camera that helps all of you hang out with my awesome cat while I work. So you can find out more about that project if you take a look at my previous videos. Those are on scanlime.org or on my YouTube channel. There's a playlist with all the previous edited videos and all the previous live streams. And that's been a pretty in-depth project so far, covering a lot of ground. The last video was about computer vision mostly, but there were a few, like there was a video just about this winch design, for example. That kind of in. Okay, so those are mostly tight. I can now tighten the ring around the emergency stop switch. Now going around these to crank them down a little more. Click. I didn't even need to make that sound that time. Yeah, like I said, these bolts are not great. They have a slightly too large hex opening. Alright, next step, under the power supply. We need to put 6 bolts in behind the motor. It's annoying, I know, it's terrible. Basically, I designed the whole upper half of the winch before designing the lower half. And this is one of the things I ended up with because of that. It's all just like a compromise between different kinds of prototyping. You know, it's like, well, I could have had one prototype that helped me dial in the winch design more, and then done another prototype that helps me integrate that with the electronics. But instead, I tried to design like an open-ended mechanical prototype, which I could use on its own, but then extend. But of course, like extending it like that isn't going to be quite as good as just designing the whole thing with a clear goal in mind. So it's very prototypey. But on the bright side, a lot of the things that I would have ended up spending a lot of time fussing over, like, you know, redesigning this thing again, it's like, well, that wouldn't have mattered if I wanted to change the way the whole thing works anyway, to use like 2 drive motors or completely different sensors or whatever, or to have like a zeroing mechanism. So that there are all those things which I'm finding out by doing this. So I think that's like the prototypey nature of that is still super valuable. And I know some of this project ended up looking and feeling a lot less prototypey, like more like designing like consumer electronics enclosures and stuff like that. But a lot of the extra design work that came from trying to make this compact was necessary to make it easily enclosable and mountable. And then that was to make it sort of survive in this shop where it has to hang out with me and my cat in my messy environment. And so that stuff, I think, was effort pretty well spent. And yeah, and then there's stuff where, like, if I wanted to polish up the electrical design, it would be really easy actually to add current sensing to this. There's actually already a current sensing output on the H-bridge chip that I'm using that just isn't wired up. But I just didn't bother wiring it because that would just be extra complexity in an area of the project that I don't really need to prototype right now. Like, I know I could hook that up. There's no risk in that. I don't need to prototype it. The thing that there is maybe a question about is like, well, how useful is that? And so by having it, maybe you could answer that question. But you could also maybe answer that question from another angle and just see, well, how well does this work without it, which is how I've been doing it so far. And there are certainly maybe some more detailed fault conditions you could report with motor current sensing. But so far, I've been detecting all the faults just by looking at the encoder and to some extent the strain gauge. But yeah, and that's one of those things where, like, if I was doing this at a different stage of prototyping and I was printing a circuit board, I would have very different requirements. I'd be trying to get things mechanically mountable on the same plane, so I can just have like all the sensors right on the PCB. I'd probably try to I'd have a lot more stuff wired up. I'd have a lot more electrical safety features and electrical like sensors. I'd have like a temperature sensor and a voltage sensor and a current sensor that I could read back, stuff like that. But at this stage in the prototype, like, because I would be just like wiring all that stuff together, it just isn't worth it. It's not worth the effort, it's not worth the time, it's not worth the messiness, it's not worth the like having to backtrack on it later, because like this prototype is teaching me different things right now. This is also teaching me never to use E6000 to glue in captive nuts unless your captive nut thing is really, really snug. And even so, I'm like slightly regretting using it for these, because on one of the winches, I'm already starting to notice that one of those captive nuts is getting a little loose. So I'm starting to think, okay, maybe only epoxy ever. And so I used epoxy for these captive nuts, and it's nice. It's still nice and hard. I'm gonna go back and tighten the other side, and then that layer will be done. And I think I can go and attach the power supply next. I'm getting a little more used to working on these winches. It's definitely a little easier to put it together this time. Oh yeah, Tuco seems to have vanished. Thank you for pointing that out. Where is he? I can't see him from here. Oh, we've lost the overhead camera. Come back, overhead. Come back, overhead camera. Oh, he's on the couch. Let's go to the couch. That's only a slight move, actually. Can the computer see him? I think so. Yeah, there we go. Click. Oh yeah, this project really makes me appreciate having a well-made ball driver. Yeah, Tim says E6000 is strong but too flexible for most bonding purposes. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when I'm using E6000, it's specifically because I want something that is flexible, though. So I think I'm going to agree with your description of E6000, but not say that it's like too flexible. It really, really depends on what you're doing. But holding in fasteners, like, you're not going to rely on the glue to keep the orientation. The glue is just going to keep it from falling out. And I thought I could rely on the PLA in this case, but I'm thinking maybe I can't, no, necessarily. We'll see. Alright, so now I just get to kind of fuss this into place again. Did I write that? I can't tell whether that's just a scratch or whether that's a Roman numeral 6 scratched into the bottom of the power supply. VI. It might just be accidental. I don't think I would have scratched that because I don't think I ever bought 6 of these. Alright, so all the wires need to be above this bracket. Same, well, not the same over here actually. The microcontroller wiring harness needs to be below, and the other wiring harness needs to be like below on this axis. Behind and below, I guess, I don't know. And this needs to go into the mounting hole. There's a long screw. This melty area over here where I was reckless with the soldering iron. Alright, that's coming out. Let's put the nuts on. Click. Okay. The fasteners are getting a lot less exotic. These are all things I have big bags of now. Oh man, I'm stoked about replacing that gear. I'm hoping this winch works as well as the others now, if not better. Aw. Some kind words from Black Omen Guild on Twitch chat. You're amazing. Good night. Well, thanks. Good night to you too. Oh, geez, I just knocked the magnet off. Let's let the magnet hang out over there. Is any of this magnetic? That's aluminum. Ooh. Ooh, it can hang out over here. Yeah, this is starting to look like a mostly assembled spool pig, huh? As the layers go back on. Like an onion. Spool pig's got layers. Got the high voltage layer, got the big old capacitor layer, got the honkin' H-bridge department. Alright, so that's all together. Looks like that wiring is fine. The whole top section seems like it's in good shape. This needs rewinding, of course. And this needs some zip tying of the wires. And then I've got to splice the motor back onto the motor driver because we had to cut that earlier. But yeah, this is almost done. I need to pee. Sorry. I need to use the restroom. I'll be right back. I think I might also get some more beverage. I think I'm going to put more almond milk in this and warm it up. Thanks for bearing with me. Right. Paul says that's one of the problems with incremental, iterative, or evolutionary engineering, sort of clean sheet redesigns that take everything into account simultaneously. Right. And it can get easier to get used to that with software because you can do certain kinds of refactoring with less, with like less overhead, or sometimes with like leaving less of a mark on the resulting design. Yeah. The ogre layer, says Tim Williams. Which layer was that? Oh, googly eyes? Oh, right. The magnet has googly eyes on it. What? Yeah. Ooh. It's not a good noise. Alright, let's warm up the soldering iron and retrieve the zip ties. We're also getting really close to time to test this, so I'm also going to retrieve the cables we need for that. Oops. I have such a, I don't know, like a neurotic spot, like an attentiveness or something for electrical problems in my vicinity. And I keep hearing that noise that iOS devices make when they when you attach them to the charger and they start charging. And so I think, somebody's got like a bad electrical connection, and I keep trying to track it down. But I think it's my friend's iPad. I think they set it so that that's the notification sound. It's driving me nuts now. Oh no, Joseph's food is cold. I do that all the time. I'm like forgetting my food in the microwave. The best one is when I'm like about to put something into the microwave and I discover a 6-hour-old cold version of whatever I was about to put in. It feels like time travel. I've got to crawl behind Tuco to plug in this network cable, and I hope he doesn't mind. Len says, I kind of hope you do bother Tuco so we can see the tracking in action. Alright. Just getting this warmed up. I mean, the soldering iron's already warm, but... So now I've got power and Ethernet ready to go for this winch, so we can run it in just a sec. Alright, I think the next step is just splicing the motor leads. Oh, hey Took. You gonna honor Len's wish over there? Oh, and he walks behind the chair. Can I keep up with him? Oh, Tuco, is he gonna dig a hole in that trash bag? Hey, Tuk. No. That's not gonna work, is it? He's breaking my garbage bags. I guess that's a sign that I need to take them out to the dumpster. The dumpster is just so far away here. A lot of people just leave their trash out in the hallway for the building custodians to take care of, but I don't like doing that. I usually just, I would feel bad about making it someone else's problem. I'd rather just take it out occasionally, so. In the meantime, Tuco's into it, I guess. Hey, boy. Oh, I'm already gonna have to rebag that. Those ends are still fine. Let's just put some fresh heat shrink over. Hey, Tuco. Be right back. Boy, don't do that. No. Oh, Tuco. You know, he's occasionally the cuddliest little beast. I would just have these moments. I think I had a couple of these in the last week where he would just get super, super into just being held for, you know, not like for a huge amount of time because he's a cat, but, you know, we would have like a few minutes where he would just be hanging out and just really enjoying being pet and stroked and held, and you know, I'd like rub his head just right, and he would let out these long happy sighs. Can we get any of this? Oh, he wants out already. You wanna go? All right. I platypus says Tuco push things off the table. Sometimes. He and I have reached sort of an equilibrium where I tend not to put things in places where he would put them off, but he certainly does that. Yeah, I guess, yeah, he and I have been living together long enough that that's less of a problem with he and I. Oh, he is really, oh jeez. He is getting into stuff now. I think he found that bin of wire that he's already been chewing on that I've been about to discard, but I was going to go through there and find the non-chewed wires and try to save them. Oh, jeez, that cat. He is a bit of a handful, I have to admit, which I think is part of the reason I ended up with him. Because he is a bit of a handful just in general, but he's great. Oh yeah, I wanted to share. I went through. I found the actual original like email thread from a while ago where I ended up that actually led to me adopting Tuco, and it was interesting to go back and look at that. Since it was not quite as much like my decision as more something that I agreed to in hindsight, but it was pretty great. I mean, it was a good thing to end up with. It was just like a weird way for it to happen. And it was kind of because Tuco's previous caretakers couldn't take care of him because he's a little too rambunctious in a small place, and he needs space. I think he spent a lot of the first year of his life in Texas somewhere, where he had some outdoor space. Oh, he is back to that bag. Hey, Tuco. His favorite thing. Alright, Splice Town, population 2. I feel like there needs to be a concise expression that's like dad jokes, but like weird aunt jokes, and that would be like my thing. Oh yeah, that's just a weird aunt joke. Ah, that relies on like younger siblings having kids though, which isn't necessarily a pleasant thought. I guess that just leaves me as being like crazy internet cat lady. And crazy internet cat lady joke is like, well, yeah, but sure, whatever. They're just crazy internet cat lady, who cares? Hey, Tuke. Oh, for fuck's sake. Tuco. How did you even get in there? Stop that. Hey. Dude, you can't be eating plastic. Honey. Jeez, I got this box, which is full of power cables and packing material. Two things Tuco is not allowed to have. And he knows that, and he was getting into it because I took the heavy bucket off of the top of that. Oh, cat. Alright, heat shrink. Oh, that positioning was kind of bad, actually. Jeez. Whoa. And then I dropped my trackball and now there are like a million bolts on the floor and Tuco's intrigued. Okay, great. I'm just good at chaining my problems together. Tuke, can you help me with the bolt part of this mess? I think that's a yes. I don't know. Oh, man. How did I mess that up so badly? There's like a tiny bit of wire poking out. I might just try redoing that. That just offends me so much. That's like the last thing I want, just like floating around. I mean, not the last thing. The last thing I would want floating around is maybe this black wire, which is the 120 volts AC, but it's gonna be like pretty well over here. But that wire, geez, that's not so great either. Thanks. Ron on YouTube chat just tuned in and said that they really like the cat hat. Well, thank you. Been fond of this too. I keep forgetting where I got this. I think I just got this at Target or something like over the winter, but it's been nice. I don't know which winter, mind you. It might have been a couple years ago. Let's try this again. I'm just splicing the motor wires back on and trying to fail at it a little bit less. Oh, Just Call Me Bob is asking what the copper thing is on the table right behind you. Behind me. Copper thing. You might be talking about a roll of speaker cable, but I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about. Sorry. I'll try to figure that out. Yeah, that's the best I got. Aw. Son of the Cake says, I saw one of your reverse engineering videos today with my husband, and then he saw Tuco for the first time and said, what a comfy cat, just sitting there on the table. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, Tuco is a master of comfort, and I appreciate that about him. Okay. Well, we could test this. My inclination is to bundle up the cables a little bit, but I think maybe we test it. So I should thread it, because otherwise the control loop is just going to be cranky. So let's thread it and then test it a little bit, and then zip tie the cables, put the shell on, mount it, and then test it some more, and calibrate it. So let's get some slack. That loop, where's that loop? That's not so great, right? We should rewind this winch a little bit, but let me get on with threading it first. It's around there. Oh, okay, it was a box that was looking coppery in the sun. Well, that's pretty cool too. Alright, it's under and over and under and through. Almost. There we go. Okay, let's try this out. Let's tablet. Reconnected. I'm not logged in, but I can still look at the sensors. Alright, bot 3. Alright. Contact. Some sensor data. Yeah, the sensor definitely needs to be re-zeroed. It's off by like 150 grams. Oh, I still have the filter set really slow on account of the calibration. Well, whatever. We'll have to deal with that later. I'm not logged in from this right now. Let's just try to drive it a little. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez, sorry. I've actually got to wrap up this stream soon. That's okay, I think we're about on schedule. Oh yeah, Alice wants to find a sea otter version of this hat. Yeah, that would be great. I have 2 animal hats. I have this hat, and I have a shark hat, which is pretty great. I got that one at a local like comic and crafts and art fair, where the person who made them was selling them. Okay. So I think if this were lighting up, it would be telling me that this winch is active. I'm gonna see if I can drive it. Jeez. Oh, the caps. Ha ha ha. This goes below the capstan, not above the capstan. Let's try that again. I had the halt button handy, thankfully. Okay, so we're out of halt. Let's try the other direction. Yeah, that's better. Now I'm in control, unlike the opposite of that. I'm gonna try to at least unwind it past that point that seems to be really, really bad. We can do a little of this while it's totally open like this. Was that it? Definitely needs calibration. Oh, hey, Tuco. Yeah, I think we're past the really bad part. It's not perfect. I can definitely see some loose winds. It'd be nice to have some little friction roller thing that I can apply while winding it. I mean, a weight would do it too, but that doesn't work for very much travel. Okay, I'm gonna wind it back up now. Oh yeah, Vavasor is wondering if we know the answer to will it gearbox. Yeah, it definitely seems like the answer is trending toward yes right now. This is all running off the new 3D printed gear, and it seems to be about as good as we expect. It is like about to lift itself with the tension I'm giving it. I had to stop for a knot. No tangle. What was that? That was an interesting slip it just did. Let's go forward again. Yeah, I mean, this whole spool is wound really center heavy, and so anytime it slips over to the edges, the control loop is like, what just happened? But we can try to rewind the whole thing later once it's more assembled. So far, this is looking good. I think the gearbox is pretty happy. Aw. More kind words from Paul. People seem to like my internet cat ladiness. Well, I'll try to keep that up. I'm certainly sure Tuco's trying to keep that up, trying to keep being a cat. Oh, here he is. Hey, Duke. Can I find him with the camera before he leaves? Here we go. I just have too much clutter in the shop, and the camera is really low right now, the way it's mounted, so it can't see around very much of it. And the reason I had that camera really low is because I wanted to keep it out of the way of the winching I was doing up in the taller parts of the shop. Okay, well, let's unplug this, put it more back together, and try to put it on the wall at least. Got to keep an eye on the time because I've got a different thing I've got to get to soon, but I know it's not like I've got to panic. I tried to give myself enough time to wind this up gracefully. Tuco. Oh, Tuke, get out of there, honey. Oh. Do you like laps, Tuke? He usually doesn't. Yeah, today is no exception. Yeah, Mako MK says, I was wondering about that capstan routing, right? Yeah, that was not how it was supposed to go. That was my mistake. Alright, so here I'm just going to try to vaguely keep the high voltage and low voltage stuff kind of separate. How did this get looped around? Ah. That kitty. Yeah, okay, so let's bundle that down and then bundle those over. That should do. Yeah, I wonder which winch is going to break next. If it's going to be this one again or one of the others. But it is, I'm very happy we have a way of replacing this gear now, as I don't think the metal gears are going to break, knock on wood. But yeah, I mean, if we do have another mechanical failure, I would expect it to be either this new plastic gear or some of the other 3D printed parts, just because, like, those are the weak links now. I mean, maybe we find a way to destroy that metal gear, or the 2 metal gears, but I doubt it. Or maybe the bearing? But the bearing in the motor shouldn't be under much stress now. Like, in this design, I've got separate bearings holding all the stress from, like, the spool. Alright, low voltage wires bundled, high voltage wires attached down. That seems fine. I think let's put the shell on. All these, oh, there's an extra 35mm screw. All of these 3 35mm screws are all in. That one is, and that one is. I think I might have put one of the power supply bracket screws back together using just like a random 35mm screw from my desk, because all the 35mm screws are where they're supposed to be, so this is now an extra. Oh well. That leaves us with, we should have 8 M3x8s now. Yes. That's perfect. So we'll get the shell. Aw. Paul says that Tuco and I make a great pair. Yeah, I think so too. I'm glad it comes through. I'm just super happy Tuco and I found each other. I think we're both just really, really great for each other. Even if he does get into my plastic bags. Hey, Tuke, quit that. Don't you want to play with a bolt? Bolts are so much more fun. Oh yeah, he's much more interested in playing with bolts than eating plastic bags. But when he's bored, he will nom on those plastic bags. Which is not a good thing for him, obviously. I don't know how bad it is for him, but I assume it's not good. I mean, I think long pieces of plastic bag would certainly be bad. He's been eating little pieces as far as I can tell, but still not good. Oh, hey, Tuke. Oh man, Tuco is lonely, and I'm gonna have to, like, leave right after the stream, so he and I are gonna get to hang out one-on-one. Alright, that seems to be situated. I need to plug this LED lead in. How did I get this stuck under the power supply? Oh jeez. Why? Oh no. Didn't see that coming. I might be able to get this out. It's just like wedged between the edge of the power supply and the edge of the microcontroller. It's the wiring harness for the LEDs. Oh, can I get it? Oh, it's so close. Yes. I don't think I broke anything. Cool, that was tight. So let's plug that in over here. Tuco and I were both just like, what is that? The building was shaking. I think it's the neighbors dropping weights, but in a slightly different way than usual. Alright, that's in there. Oh no! Carrick says, I joked that if I was to get Snake Eyes x-rayed, there'd be all sorts of stuff in there. Bottle caps, coins. Yeah. Alright, that's in there. Alright, that's in there. That's in there. Alright, 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 that's in there. Al continue to be somewhat happy with the way these shells attach. It's like not perfect, but it came out pretty well considering how many variables were involved. I think this particular winch, the top plate here is a little bit high on this backside, which makes these screws not quite match up. Not all the winches are like this. She said completely defensively. This one maybe? That one's fine. I still have lube residue on my hands. I'm sure it would have been a lot worse if I wasn't using gloves. I probably would have it all over all of my tools at that point. Something to send your enemy is like glitter coated in Teflon. Okay. Last 4 screws. This is like a journey deep into the bowels of the winch, getting from the outer casing all the way to the motor gearbox. Because that has got to be one of the hardest to get to parts in this entire assembly. Short of maybe like, I don't know, what else would be really hard? I don't know, replacing just the core of the spool, maybe? Because you'd have to disassemble the whole spool, which I think you can probably only do destructively. So you'd probably have to reprint everything except the... There's like one plate on the spool that isn't really connected to the rest of it, it just kind of sits there. But the other plate is like the drive side, and it's got this big chunky gear that like hammers in place. So that would also be difficult. You'd probably have to sacrifice that and the gear that then, the like Ninja Flex part that attaches to that then. Aw. Fotoon says, great work, keep it up. Your persistence with this project is great. Is this the last piggy? Thanks, yeah. It does require some persistence, but it's nice when stuff starts to work this well. And yeah, this is the last piggy. We had this one working briefly, but then I think some combination of some failures that were sitting there waiting to happen, plus some getting it tangled while debugging some new code, led to breaking a gear in this winch, which I think we just fixed. There we go. This last screw goes in. And I don't have have a great camera solution for getting a camera all the way over there right now. Can I see that with the cat cam maybe? The PID loop. Is Tuco over there? No. You can't really see where the winch attaches over there either, but I guess let's try this. Alright, so got this. Let's plug it in briefly over here just to make sure the lighting and everything still works. But then I will go over there and put it on the wall. I think we have time to at least, I don't know if we have time to calibrate it, but we can at least like hook it up and try running it around. $7 watts. And there's the lighting. Cool. Oh, great. That's the force sensor. So the force sensor filter is very slow right now because I was starting to calibrate it. We'll have to revert that change in the config file. But, so if I hold this, then I can start to select winches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one glows. Or halt mode. 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. See? And then up, down. Seems happy. Okay. So actually, I guess I need to go get the. I guess I need to switch to the headset and decide how much of this to do. And I need to pee again. I'll be right back from the restroom. Oh, Tuco really wanted a bite to eat. Okay. Let's switch briefly back to the headset, and we can put this winch in and just do some really basic running it around before I've got to go. Oh, was the cat cam tracking the hat? I missed that. Wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'd be slightly surprised. I haven't seen it do that, but I wouldn't be that surprised. Here's the mouse. I think we're back on the wireless. Yeah. So, back on the wireless mic. Any noise you're hearing is probably me bumping into things and or having RF interference. Alright, I'm gonna go over there with this winch and stick it on the wall. Oh yeah, I guess without the debug view you couldn't tell if it was the computer vision or just the correlation tracker. Yeah, the correlation tracker certainly might log on to me and follow me across the room. That is the kind of thing it'll do. Alright, just sticking this on the wall mount. The screws I used on this kind of janky cardboard contraption here, they're a little bit too long and they stick out through the 2x4. I've been meaning to like grind off the ends, but on this one I had a tiny piece of wood that was behind there as I put the screws in, and that was actually like sticking, and so I just kept it there. But on the other winch, I had duct tape back there just to keep them from being sharp and terrible. And that piece of wood just fell off, so I'm going to put a little bit of duct tape on. So the winch is on the wall mount. Here's the network cable. The network cable is still very temporary here. I've got a couple of the winches wired with like somewhat nicely installed network cables, but the two at the end of the room that's usually on the bottom of the screen, like on the overhead camera, at that side, they're just like cables strung across the floor right now. We have an incredibly beautiful sunset right here. Oh man. Can I share this with you? Oh, I don't think I can get a camera over here and it's really good. I don't have like that much clear, like low horizon kind of sky around here because there's like more and more tall buildings going up, but oh man, the sky I can see is really good. Sorry to taunt you all with that. I feel like sunsets are just one of those things you can't really take like ad hoc photos of. I mean, I've got maybe a couple of good sunset photos that I didn't really plan for, but like it's just kind of a challenging photography subject. I would usually want a tripod and to think about my exposure and carefully set it up. We get a lot of good sunsets here. See, that interference was me bumping the microphone against the objects in my vicinity. Completely my fault. And, alright, let's just plug this into power. Canmy has electricity. Yeah. It has power, and it's now happily glowing red because it's still having that force error. So, overhead view maybe? Oh, let's have a working overhead view maybe. How about that? Cool. I think she's working. Oh, geez. That's a dangerous situation. That could have been what got this tangled in the first place. I mean, I don't think it was, but something like this. So what I just did is I unrolled the winch a little bit while it was under tension, and then I let go of the cord, and then on its own the winch started rolling in the other direction, like taking up some slack. And I think that was just a basic like control loop overshoot, or possibly due to the cord moving past the position sensor in the other direction. But oh yeah, okay, I can actually trigger that if I kind of manually scoot the cord such that it slides past the position sensor. I can get it to actually slurp up some cord under PID loop control. That's interesting. Why is the PID loop not going into halt mode? My control input should be zeroed. It's possible it's under the motion threshold. There's like a threshold the encoder has to move at least over a certain speed for some duration while we're commanding it to 0, and then it goes into halt mode, and so it just might not have quite entered those criteria. But anyway, the maybe more direct problem here is that it wasn't halting because of the force sensor being completely slack. And that could be because of the calibration, but it could have also been because of the filtering set really, really slow because I was going to do the calibration. So like the filtering was still kind of recovering. So I might actually manually put this into halt mode, and then I just wanted to string this back up to the pulley, which is kind of the final step of installing this. So I'm taking up the temporary paracord here, and like I think I want a calibration procedure we can do with the winches strung up on the real pulleys. So we'll work on that probably next time, or I'll just do that between streams. I doubt the calibration is that far off, but I do want to fix it for sure. At the very least, the 0 seems to be kind of messed up. And the 0 is easy to get because I don't have to put a weight on there, I just have to pull the cord slack. So if it turns out, like I would like to just redo the whole calibration because I don't know how bad it is, but if it turns out that the zeroing needs calibration way more often than the rest of it, I could just make that a separate procedure easily enough. Tuco is joining me over here by the window. It's pretty cool. I moved some stuff around over here to make room for the winch, and so he's probably enjoying the different view. Alright, so I'm now tying the winch spool cord, I guess, to the temporary cord that's going through the pulley. Putting some tension on that temporary cord, and now I'm going to unroll the winch until the knot passes all the way down here. So far, this is working well, except for the part where I need like 4 hands to control this process. Oh, geez. Yeah, actually, I'm realizing that when I've done this in the past, I was actually kind of relying on the force sensor to stop the winch for me. And I just did that out of habit, and it did not stop, which was almost bad. So I've got to be more careful about doing this now. This is also hopefully unrolling the winch past some of that really loose stuff at the end. Yeah, maybe calibrating and respooling is the thing I want to do on this. Now Tuco's on the stairs just watching this process. I'm off the frame, aren't I? Yeah. Can I get in frame? Kinda. Here's the knot. Yeah, this winch seems happy. It just needs calibration. Alright. Well, I think I've got to wrap this up and clean up this paracord mess a little bit. But yeah, thanks for joining me. That was nice. I think we got our winch fixed. I'm not going to attach this to the central spool thing yet. I'm just going to tie this cord off so we don't lose it, since I do want to calibrate this before we do anything else with it. But yeah, this is great. I'm actually kind of bad at knots. It'd be convenient if I was better at knots. Like I've been careful to do like sturdy knots for everything that matters so far, but like it usually takes me some time to think it through, and I'm not very good at just like casually tying various kinds of knots. And I'm terrible at remembering what they're called. It's like I can't deal with the like random kind of anthropological, like, I don't know, what is it? Just like this like a weird pile of arbitrary culture that people create when they name knots and describe how to do them to each other. Like that, I just can't handle that quite. I need like just a picture of the knot and like to understand how the forces balance against each other. Tuco's very interested in this paracord I'm reeling up. Alright, well thanks so much for joining us. We got some stuff done, made a gear. Well, we made a gear in the previous stream, but got it installed, and it seems to be successy. It is a successy gear. We catch up on chat here as we wrap things up. Yeah, we did have Tuco eating, that was pretty good. Oh, cool. Eddie's like, "What's up? Made it in time. Nice." Yeah, sorry we're wrapping things up now, but I'm glad for all the folks who wanted to make it to a stream and managed to find their way here. I have thought about the scheduling, and I mean right now, for folks who are new here, the stream schedule tends to be pretty arbitrary. It's mostly like when I have the work ready to stream, and I guess I do have a bit of a pattern of like starting to stream when it's kind of early afternoon around here, but a lot of it really depends on when stuff comes together. And sometimes I can do it multiple times a day. And so when I've asked folks, usually the response I get is that it's nice to have some variety, but yeah, that's still kind of an open question. We might try to change things up a little. And yeah, well, thanks for joining me, and thanks to all the people who support the stream by sending in hardware, by telling your friends about the show, by tossing a couple bucks my way every month with Patreon. That's what keeps this going, and I just try to keep working on interesting projects and bringing you all the details in the form of these streams and the edited videos and whatever else I can post, all the source code and articles and whatever else that come out of this stuff too. All right, well, have a good night, everyone. I'll see you folks next time. Happy hacking.